Okay, I'd love to welcome everyone to this 5th September Living Histories meeting, and also this History Week, History Illuminated event, analog to digital, hands-on audio visual formats that we are also conducting in collaboration with it. I'd like to just pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land that we are beaming into you through Zoom, which is the Awabakal people of Newcastle, Mullumbimba region. And I also want to extend that respect to elders, both past, present, and those yet to be. I wish to also pay my respects to the lands from which you're beaming into from around. I hear we've got people coming in from Adelaide. Is that right, Anne?
Yes, we do.
So there you go. That's wonderful. So I pay my respects to your traditional custodians in those lands as well. And also any Indigenous Aboriginal people that are joining us today. So let's kick off this program. Anne, would you like to take over the reins?
Yeah, sure thing. I might just at the beginning just remind people to just keep themselves on mute until we get to the Q&A session, just so we don't get any background interference during the speakers. And when it does come to Q&A, you're welcome to put some questions in the chat, or with the reactions button down the bottom, you can pop your hand up if you want to ask a question or be part of the discussion. So we thought with the theme for History Week and hands-on, that the project that the team has done here at Special Collections at the University of Newcastle Library has been very hands-on in terms of it's quite a big community collaboration. So we thought if we have the session run so that we do a short presentation, and we're going to stop and have a Q&A. We've got like some of our industry professionals available to answer any questions that you have. And then we'll also be just giving a short presentation on what next, and another project that's sort of running alongside the digitization project to help search the content. So look, I will just share my screen. Like I said, Jenny and I will just do a brief overview of the project, and then, yeah, certainly have some questions ready that you have that come from this presentation, or if you've got questions around projects that you're running in your own institutions or community groups. But yeah, we'll get started. So I said this project we'll talk about relates to video, magnetic tape that belongs to the NBN television archive that has been digitised. But we will also give just a brief overview later of some of the other content that we hold and projects that are going to come up in the future. So this image is from the NBN archive, and I thought it sort of represents quite well the complexities around digitising such a large television archive. This slide, I thought, just so that people sort of from other areas get just a bit of an overview of where the GlamX lab sits within Special Collections. So in the library, we have 3 physical spaces. We have where our physical collections are held. We have our reading room. Then we've got the GlamX lab, which is sort of a mix of technologies, but we have concentrated on digitising our audiovisual content. And it is also a Glam lab space for that innovation, community, students, volunteers to come together to work on different projects. And then we showcase them through our digital repository, which is Living Histories. We also have a Hunter Living Histories website where we can post short updates on projects. Students can publish, community members can publish on how they've used some of our digital assets. And then through this monthly showcase, it's a good opportunity to invite guests, to have people talk about projects, and certainly encourage any newcomers that at this session today to reach out if you want to be part of those monthly showcase sessions. This is just a video. I thought it's hard to describe the lab space. It's set up to host 10 students, volunteers, community researchers. We've got a 3D scanner. We've got a copybook scanner for doing our rare books. There's the copybook scanner there. At the side of the lab is our audiovisual digitization lab. And yeah, we host our industry professionals and our work integrated learning students. And so this space here is where really the engine room of where a lot of this digitization has been happening. And I'll just pause it there, but that's the rack that has been used to digitize our magnetic tape. And it's set up to be able to digitize any format of magnetic tape. But yeah, this is the space where a lot of that work has been happening. So Gianni, do you want to just talk about why digitize, the importance of digitizing?
Yes. Well, look, you're probably asking, well, why the emphasis on audiovisual? Well, human beings are very clever at coming up with new ways to express themselves, and the challenge usually has been how that expression has come out. Now, in the days when people wrote things on parchment was made pretty well, and it can survive for hundreds and hundreds of years, depending on the production of what we choose to put our self-expression in. Those things can last for quite a long time, or they can last for a very short amount of time. The problem with audiovisual or film and magnetic tape is that these production techniques involved machines. Those machines are needed to actually play these things back. And once technology moves on, we have a lot of really important heritage, historical records that are in these formats, which basically need to move on unless you're going to keep all these machines going. So that's been a big issue confronting audiovisual archives around the globe. And a number of years ago, the National Film and Sound Archive basically sounded the alarm through a document called Deadline 2025, which basically put everyone on notice to start waking up to the fact that their priorities needed to be readjusted to really target whatever film material, audiovisual, magnetic tape you had in all these sorts of forms. You had to deal with it now, because if you didn't, then you would find that after 2025, it would be a lot more difficult to actually track down machines and the know-how to actually digitize. See, some things we digitize. We want to digitize a piece of paper, for instance, with something interesting on it. That's easy, you know. We can usually just put that on a scanner and do it. When it comes to the processes of doing film or magnetic tape, you really need some industry professional expertise. And we were very, very fortunate to have Phil Lloyd and his team of MBN production people who were able in retirement to start doing this for the massive MBN archive. And they've achieved nothing short of just something amazing from our point of view, from a regional university's point of view. I think with little to no budget, I think we've achieved just exceptional things they're still working on. So one part is the migration from that format to another. It's almost like a life raft. Okay, so the digital world is just the life raft for this, because we're not sure that these machines or this film will continue to be there. It's always good to have the physical format live with you as long as it possibly can, if you can. But generally what's happening with audiovisual is that the digital is becoming, you know, the only life raft we've got for this stuff. And we've only got one chance to basically do it, and we're doing it now. So there might be a lot of material lost from this era, but what we've done is thanks to these people that have been involved. Anne's going to take you on the next step, because one thing is migrating it to the digital format, but once it's in a digital form, that film needs to know who it is. Okay, so if you can imagine a digital object, much like ourselves, we've got a mind that tells us who we are, where we came from, where we were born, where we grew up, who our friends are, who we are, what we're interested in, who's in us. You know, that film needs all that information put in as well. So that's almost like the metadata, they call it. And that metadata is like the consciousness of that digital object that has to be physically put in. So the reason why the GlamX Lab is a lovely space to do it in is because we need the old and the young involved in this project. The young with their expertise with the technologies, the old with the expertise with the knowledge of who they are. So if they come across a bit of footage with the mayor of Cessnock on there, the older person is going to know who the mayor of Cessnock actually was and can key it in. Okay, that sort of information, that nitty-gritty information. We've actually put up football games, and within, you know, the fanatics who are into football within 2 seconds can know who the teams were playing, what date they were playing in. So there's a huge amount of, there's a community hive mind out there that can really help. So really the first bit is just to get the stuff off the original format. The second bit is to actually put the consciousness into that digital object so that you can locate it out there for use by researchers, community people trying to put their worlds back together again.
Yeah.
How's that for an overview?
That's good. Thank you, Gioni. And I have to also acknowledge this image that is shown now. Like Gioni said, we've had a big community behind us of people that have worked in the television industry. And certainly the importance of their knowledge of the content that's been digitised has been absolutely essential. So this is Barry Nancaro, and I notice Barry's joining us today. So welcome, Barry, and thank you for the contribution you've made to this project. So the importance of having people now creating metadata who were there, like, they filmed the content, so creating the metadata is going to be much easier because the knowledge is still with this community. And so we'll just go on to the next slide. Yeah, so the project began back in 2007 by the community industry professionals from NBN, and moved to the University Archives in early 2017. The task of migrating the film and magnetic tape archives to the digital started by Philip Lloyd, who was mentioned earlier, in 2007. Now this presentation is available online, so I've just posted in the chat where you can find this presentation, where I've hyperlinked some other information relating to the background of the project. As been mentioned, the deadline 2025 was a real impetus to get the digitisation started, and having started back in 2007, that the team was able to get the magnetic tape digitised for the 60th anniversary of NBN television last year. So it was quite a significant feat to be able to get digitized the content, particularly in the couple of years of being on and off campus. Here's some of what we call our super digitizers, and the methodology that they used was to digitize in 10-year increments. It was maybe a different way of doing it. A lot of institutions will digitize on demand. So, if there's a need for a research community, that things will be prioritized. But in this case, it was probably a nice, neat way of doing it because you knew where you were up to. And it also meant that they could digitize for the following year's commemorative events and anniversaries. So the team was always sort of on the front foot for having that content already available to be able to sort of share with researchers or with communities if there were events. The university library was really generous in supporting the project, and like you saw, there's the sort of in-house support of having that space, and also the space for data. And somewhere to back up those very large files, and just being led by the industry professionals. Again, you know, there's a whole list of people on the website, and they're a mix of, work integrated learning, volunteers. But we just truly acknowledge all those people that have helped on the project for well over a decade.
And I just want to throw in there Professor Marguerite Johnson, that was our champion to the VC, to really, because she wanted the students in the humanities to have some sort of access to work integrated learning. So she was a real force to get that room set up, or those rooms set up.
She certainly was. And I think the timing was sort of perfect, because the university was supporting and wanting to promote work integrated learning for all. So what they call Will for All, and having space for students to work in a practical way. So they could be doing communications, they could be, learning theory and methodology, but having that space where students can work and apply what they're learning in a real practical way. So even though a lot of the technology has changed, a lot of those professional standards and skills around interviewing, the students also had that contact and able to work directly with people that have worked in the industry. So some of the challenges with the resources, as you can imagine, of course, it's the machines. We used, and I guess the philosophy that the team had been using anyway, was that they could see the importance of digitizing, the need to digitize this at-risk format, and they sort of just did it the best they could with little to almost no funding. So it was this approach that they just got on and did it, sort of thing. The advantage of this community that has come together is that they have knowledge of how to use the machines and technology. They also have knowledge on how to maintain and fix the machines. The challenge was that, the type of format that it has to be digitized in real time. So when we're looking at hours and hours of digitization, there was that need to have multiple machines going. There was also the need to have a good timetable of who was in, and to make sure that we're able to maximize the space and the human resource of this group. The masters of the tapes, particularly the news content that belonged to NBN television, were in really good quality, pretty good condition. So there weren't copies of copies that have been sitting in storage shed or been exposed to mold, or they weren't damaged. They were in really good condition. So that was also an advantage. The software that we've been using to digitize, to edit, to convert. Certainly, if you've got any questions around capturing, how to capture, please ask, because Phil will be able to give you a little bit, a lot more information on the particular softwares to capture. But we basically use Blackmagic, DaVinci Resolve, Wondershare, and Movavi. So again, that's the type of resource that you have to have updated on computers and have working computers.
This whole project came around almost like a smell of an oily rag type of project. All right. So all those machines that you see before you are things that Phil either had or sourced on eBay, machines that we might have had at, in the archive itself that had come from various schools that no one needed anymore, bits and pieces of things that were just all over the shop. The rack came, I think, from what was it, the School of Creative Industries, when they were shutting down their labs over there. It all just came together, bits and pieces, the whole community was just putting bits and pieces. We needed a couple of digitizing cameras, and a call went out for a donor to buy it. We had a donor buy us two to help Phil and the team. So that was like a call to arms. I mean, this thing has really been, even with the university servers trying to talk to IT about the amount of space that we needed to actually do this project, was very difficult to get through, what the sort of infrastructure we needed behind the scenes. And that depends, what you've got at that end predetermines the quality that you're that you can capture this stuff at. So you hear a lot of talk about 4K restoration of films. You know, to do that, you really need a huge amount of space to be able to create those 4K masters. I don't think we were able to do that in the early stages, and still can't do it with the level that we've got. But whatever we do at the moment is the best that we can do with the resources that we have. But it's better to have something at a particular resolution than not have anything at all. And especially when you're dealing with the team that we've got. The original intention of the space was to have young apprentices join with these older guys in order to learn the skills. We were hoping that this could be done through the work integrated learning process, but we've had a couple of COVID lockdowns in the meantime, and we've done the best with what we can with, you know, given that what has been thrown at us over the last few years.
So look, thanks for your questions. We hope to get to those. Certainly if they're not sort of...
Or maybe we can answer them as we're going through. I don't know.
Well, I know now Kerry asked, does the magnetic tape set up or does preservation standard? Yes, so Kerry, we the team digitizes and creates an MOV file. And then that's the preservation copy. We convert, so we create the MP4, and that's the copy that we share. We back up and save the digital file in AWS and the cloud. So at the moment, we're sort of migrating and working on a system where there will be technically a deep freeze of a digital storage mechanism where these digital preservation, the preservation copy will be backed up on a server that is not able to be accessed. So it's they'll be completely isolated from any working files and the converted copy. Now there's also another question, Liz. Love to hear about how you ensure the metadata stays connected to the digital object. Now, we might be able to cover that a little bit later when we talk about our Linus project and how storing a digital surrogates for long-term preservation. So that preservation question is really important.
So basically what we're moving over into Amazon will have, I hope, Paige, if you're here, some digital preservation tools that come with it. There's also a digital preservation module within Living Histories. The problem with these files is that to get them out to you, the best way we do them at the moment is once we've got the masters done, we put them holus bolus up into YouTube. So YouTube becomes our dissemination portal, and we keep the masters within the university's digital backup infrastructure. All right, so that's a huge area that's been it's one of those things whereby we got given a little bit, then we just broke that and made it bigger. We kept enlarging each time. Okay, so it's one of those things whereby it took quite a while for them to understand how big we were growing every year in order to adequately deal with the future, because digital is not just the answer to everything. Okay, the digital world itself has its own problems with how it saves things. You only really want to do it in terms of you have to really do it, in terms of if you need to, but generally it's always good to keep a foot in both worlds, because we don't know what's going to happen in the digital world. With regards to digital preservation, there are a lot of good, useful tools out there to make sure that file remains viewable for the long term, but there's no guarantee. Anyone that's had a CD-ROM with material on it or anything on a disk will know what digital preservation is when you can't open it and you can't view it, or the program that it was created in, WordPerfect, doesn't view properly anymore. I mean, these are the sorts of issues that have come with us with the digital world and will remain as challenges. But the digital preservation aspect of it is making sure that that file that we've got, that life raft that we've got for that film, we will have usable into the future, because we might not have another chance to go back to the original and do it again.
Maybe if you could respond.
Yeah, so this slide here just shows the examples of the different, and this is where I think the complexity comes in, that, you know, you can have an archive of magnetic tape, but there's numerous formats of magnetic tape. So again, having the different equipment, this is just what's shared with our users and community to see what formats we can capture and how they're captured at. So we try to capture the content of what's on it to the best possible quality. So it's not like a smaller file. It's
and this is a snapshot of the evolution of this technology while NBN was in, you know, as NBN's history, from the 1960s to the present. This is all the various permutations of technology that we've been through, each one with a different machine. The audiovisual history of the region dates back to the 1920s from the earliest we can find, which was 16 mil. So you can understand the challenges that have been ahead for the team.
Yeah.
It's basically a mini sound and film archive on a national level in a cupboard, and we've done that here.
So the news content that's been captured, as we mentioned, there's different formats. So even though it's a similar time frame, there with the different new formats coming in. So you've got operators working on both formats. So the Betacam that's been digitised between 1986 and 1999, there was 1,500 hours that was captured, and BVU over a similar period, and it's had to be captured on a different machine, 381 hours. So all up, there's like just over 4,000 files that have been digitised. Like I said, they were in real time, so it's taken quite a bit of time. So the highest quality MP4s, movie files have been captured and then converted to MP4. So that's sort of one portion. So the news content that's complete is only one part of the NBN archive. So other programs involve the Valleys people. They were interviews, documentaries, children's programs, rural programs, the earthquake footage that is quite significant nationally because of the event that happened. And we use our Living Histories repository that is a Recollect brand. We'd sort of tested how to upload video to Living Histories, and the early period of like the digitisation project, we then just concentrated on getting as much content sort of digitised as possible. And we sort of put a bit of a pause on uploading too much content onto Living Histories because we knew it was going to be such a large archive. It was then working through the architecture of where it was going to sit, how people are going to use it, and then that question of like how people are going to find content. So at the moment, the news files go for like 35 minutes. Some of them go for longer, and there might be 20 stories within the news file. So,
there were limits. There were limits as how much stuff we could put into Living Histories. That's some of those early experiments with the NBN rural shows. We had Joshua Curley came in to basically experiment putting actual movie files in there, but they were smaller. We had to make everything smaller so that we would not occupy as much space. The other option is to put the originals holus bolus into YouTube and then embed them into Living Histories, and then put all the metadata that we can in there. There was another tool within YouTube which was able to give us transcripts of all the audio within the video, which is fantastic because then we could use that to extract metadata as well. And then the Linears project after that, which Anne will talk about at the end of the show, has even been better than that. So it's been development learning because it's a big challenge to know what to do. I mean, one part is just getting the stuff off the original reels, as we said, and then the other bit, the long bit, is going to be how do you put all this information, this unlimited information that's in these films, into into a way that we can search.
So this is just a little stitch together of a few different themes. It's just, yeah, basically me diving into the different files, finding some interesting content, but there's, yeah, themes that cover like local environment and politics. As I saw I think, fashion parade. But yeah, just to be able to sort of look back at our social history and events and things that were happening in the region. It's already been there's been quite a bit of interest from sociologists, criminologists. There's a lot of crime stories, and so just a really sort of diverse collection of footage. So with each video file that came in the cassette, a cue sheet was really the only information that came with each video. So part of the work that the team has also done is digitize each cue sheet and then transcribe the keywords. And as you can see, there's not a lot of information that relates to each story. But then they've also put then the transcriptions of the cue sheets into an Excel spreadsheet. And that was really the only way we could search the news files. So for instance, you know, Tommy Go Water, if someone was sort of searching, like, yeah, you sort of have to know, I guess, have that local knowledge of, if you're wanting to sort of search water or dams and things like that, you've still got to have that background information of where are they located and then do those search terms. Or the only other way of searching stories was if you knew an exact date or an approximate month, you could go and target that footage, but it was pretty haphazard. And also the content that is being created from these cue sheets is only really what was captured back in whenever the footage was shot by somebody in the television industry. So, you know, their language and description might be different to somebody from today, and they certainly wouldn't have been thinking about how this content would be used in the future by people like ourselves.
And this is why the Living Histories platform was really good, because it could bring different formats together. So all this material you're looking at is in different homes. So some of it was at the MBN studios, some of it was at the City of Newcastle libraries, some of it was at the National Film and Sound Archive, some of it was just lying in various cupboards in, you know, other locations. So you've got a real hodgepodge of different material that you needed to bring together somehow, and also to create those relationship linkages between the materials. So as Anne said, you know, some of these topics are really brief, like computer show. It doesn't tell you, or it tells you when it was held, but doesn't give you any other details. Some of these one-line things just don't give you any information. So it's trying to connect all the bits and pieces once it goes into this thing, but you need the sort of technological support to cope. If that was just a book, we'd put the book up there and that's it. But because you're dealing with film footage, you're dealing with cue card, you're dealing with cue sheets, you're dealing with things that were involved in the production of that film, or that magnetic tape, or whatever it might be. So it's just a much more difficult thing to arrange contextually if you can't see the actual originals. So,
Paige, thank you for sharing those links. The library is in the process of developing a preservation policy, and there's some great examples that are out on our national institutions. So Paige has shared those in the chat for anyone that's interested in looking at those policies.
Just a word on preservation. The big challenge has been just getting our heads around the digitisation and making sure the infrastructure for digitisation has been there. The digital preservation side of it is really something that sits beyond that, but most people confuse with, oh, well, now that you've scanned it, that's it, you've digitally preserved it. That's how most people understand digital preservation, but it's not really. So a lot of the challenges are really just the where to put the stuff, how to deal with it, who's the army that's going to work on which bits. This has been one of those things where we haven't had 20 years to get around a committee and work it out, because this sort of job had to be done quickly, and so if we don't do it now, we may not have it. That's the thing.
So we've been uploading our content onto our YouTube site. So the challenge there is that they have to be uploaded individually, which takes a lot of time, and then metadata has to be put in with each file. So we've done over 3,000. The team's continuing to transcribe the cue sheets because that's really valuable information that can go in any future projects and valuable metadata. We're working on digitizing other magnetic tape in the university holdings. So that's what we've moved on to. And what I'll talk about a little bit later is how to make a project we've been working on to search the content. But I might stop sharing, and if anyone has any questions, or if they want to pop any questions in the chat, I can certainly then introduce you to some of our industry professionals if you want anything answered. From our Tamworth team too, I believe there's some of them zooming in from Tamworth that have worked on a similar project.
Yes, I'm from Tamworth.
Oh, so who are you? Ian, welcome Ian.
Hello, can you hear me?
No. You're a little bit quiet.
Me?
Can you hear me? I'm Seth.
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
Go for it, Seth.
Sorry, can you hear me?
you. Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Gianni, I have an idea that you've met my son,
Yes.
who was at Newcastle University doing work. He's mentioned your name, that's all.
What's your son's name?
Adam.
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 What's his last name?
Ledwatts.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
he mentioned your
Adam
name
actually
some
worked
time ago.
down here where I am right now a few years back. So
What?
he was working in records, Adam.
Yes.
Yep. I know. Well,
Yeah,
give him my regards.
I will. I'm up here with the Tamworth Regional Film and Sound Archive, and I noticed that Ian Austin, who's probably the more experienced person in our group, is here as well. I'm not sure whether he has any questions. But so far, very interesting hearing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I was aware of your organisation, actually.
Yes.
Okay, it's Ian speaking.
How you going, Ian?
Good. We've done a very similar thing to what you've done. We've inherited all the tape and film from Prime 7 way back when it was 9/8 TV, Tamworth, Taree.
Yeah.
We've just sent all our pneumatic tape to Brisbane, to the Prime archive, who are going to digitise it, because our pneumatic equipment is unserviceable. And since we've been doing this since 1995, and once the TVs went digital, or the stations went digital, we've been recording their local news off air and digitising that. And our metadata is stored on eHive. So that's how we overcome that problem.
Okay. So how do you view your material? What have you got it sitting in?
We've got a NAS, a terabyte NAS, or 26 terabyte or something.
Yeah.
Which we're filling up, and it's as it's stored on generally.
What happens if that NAS breaks down?
It backs up itself 3 times, I think.
Okay.
What we do have also is a personal collection of audio cassette tape that a deceased person recorded every council meeting, every eulogy at the funeral, any special visits or whatever. And we're about to start working on that also. But our reel-to-reel tape's a problem. We've got a lot of country music people, personal interviews, but
Yep.
we haven't been able to source a decent tape recorder.
No, and there's a bit of a challenge with reel-to-reel too. You've got to be careful with the chemical composition of the tape. There are a number of techniques. I mean, you ask anybody in a band, they've all been through this with their reel-to-reels, but there's a particular common process which involves baking the tape before you digitize it, which means sort of they basically put it in a sort of an oven at a controlled temperature to basically reconstitute the chemical sort of makeup of the tape before it's safe to digitize. Because if you try to do it without it, you run the risk of the actual layers of the audio-visual or the audio tape coming off in the heads. Isn't that right, Phil, wherever you are?
Yes, it is. It all depends on the way the tape's been stored, a whole range of things, and none of these things are cut and dried, because you can get a tape that's sort of 60 years old and it works fine.
Yeah.
Another tape that's only 20 years, depending on how it's been stored, can be a major problem. So it's nothing you can actually give a finite answer to. When somebody says, oh, I've got a 60-year-old tape, you can't say, well, we can't play it.
Yeah.
And yet someone can bring in something relatively new and you can't play it. So it's really a suck it and see on almost every single item.
Yeah, we've had the same
depending
problem.
on storage.
We've had the same problem. We've made a little oven for that reason. But another problem is some will be stereo tape, some will be single track tape.
Yeah.
So you've got to try it all before you know what you're playing with.
Yeah, well, all those machines you saw on the magnetic tape side, there was a similar evolution with reel-to-reel that happened over time, with different manufacturers coming up with new clever ways of creating audio recordings. So that's the challenge with this stuff. The challenge then when you've got it done is how, as Phil said, how you stored it. I mean, we were told when we were doing our courses in VHS tape that VHS tape could survive 500 years, just like microfilm, but only if it's stored at correct temperatures, which is around 7 or 8 degrees or less. Okay. Now, how many institutions can provide that kind of level storage? Are very limited, because you need sort of a special refrigerated area for this type of format.
We find we have to insert the synchronization pulse on VHS, otherwise you get the bands come up over the screen all the time.
Okay.
Well,
you know all about bands, don't you, Phil?
The other thing I'd like to mention,
sure what that particular problem is, but yeah.
The other thing I'd like to mention, we've recorded the local news off air onto DVDs, and we're about to start processing those back for probably 10 years to put them on our NAS storage.
Okay. Well, that's very, very dedicated of you to actually do off-air recordings of them. I guess we've been working one step before that, which is the actual from the original television station itself. But it's interesting. I don't know of anyone else that's done it that way, though. Unless, I mean, the university used to do off-air recordings through its publicity department. They used to record things off air. This was during the 1990s. But I don't know if they still do anything like that anymore now that we're in a digital era.
It's a very valuable thing to do. Down the Film Archive, there's a system involved where television stations have to send copies of their off-air news to the National Sound and Film Archives on a regular basis. And it might be twice a month or something. They have to send a copy down. That's just to identify trends, and it's not actually documenting and recording all the stories. It's because the National Sound and Film Archive is more a documenter of our media history as distinct from the rest of our history.
And it's great because you got the introduction from the commentators that are actually doing it, whereas a lot of the film that we've done misses the introductions from the newsreaders, that they lie on other documents, which are the scripts, which have also been digitized. I guess sorry.
Liz has got her hand up too.
Yeah,
Liz
sorry,
has got a
Liz, go ahead.
question.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think I've got a similar question perhaps to Marie. I'm an archivist and I love paper, and digital terrifies me because it is so complex. And a couple of us have started in a new role. For us, it's a new organization. And a couple of years back, someone had the bright idea to digitize a heap of VHS tapes. Fantastic. But they're now locked into a legacy system and we have nowhere to put the files. And there's no metadata attached to the files. So I've gone through and kind of rewatched them and tried to redescribe the items, but we don't have a system like Recollect to put them in. So do you have any advice about how we could, you know, and I've had the same issue. We tried to speak with IT about getting some space and there wasn't an understanding of why we would need to have.
No. And look, I had an hour conversation with the IT guy and it was like at the last 5 minutes, he finally got it. You know, and then after that was fantastic because we wanted a central station for all our digitization machines. So no matter what we were digitizing, whether it came out of a flatbed scanner or a flange scanner, whatever, it would go to the one central place.
So my big concern at the moment is just how on earth am I going to tie that metadata with the object and ensure they're both accessible?
Well, what's the legacy thing they were created in? What's that?
It's
can you extract the video file?
You have to use FileZilla to get into it. So I have extracted some of the files, but there's 4 terabytes worth of data in there.
Okay. Oh, that's huge.
It's huge. Yeah.
How many videotapes did they digitize? It must have been a huge
Well, so
amount.
I think when they digitized it, they they used the LOCKSS protocol. So they created multiple file formats, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So we'd only be taking out an access copy and a preservation copy. So hopefully we'd be halving what we're taking out.
Yeah.
But the question is, where do we put it?
Yes.
Once we get it out, and how do we make sure that the metadata we've recreated stays with it?
Yeah.
Because that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So
what's your institution?
I'm at La Trobe University.
Okay.
So they've recently restructured us. So they've got 3 new archivists in the library. We've separated out from.
God, such luxury.
It's great. It's fantastic. But yeah, it's going. It really is. We've got windows and everything.
Look, you need to make friends with the IT side of things so that they understand what an archive is, because IT people understand an archive as a drawer in a cupboard. Okay, that's an archive to them. So you just got to speak the same language, and it sometimes takes a bit of time for them to understand the difference in lingo, because they're educated in a different way in terms of what an archive is to what we are.
Even if we get server space, though, how are we going to make sure? Again, it's my challenge. How are we going to make sure that those digital objects are connected with the metadata we're creating?
Well, look, maybe that's something for Linnaeus, and I don't know. But look, it's like this is something that's a moving feast all the time. The technology is getting better, and as new tools come in, we give them a go. Okay, so this is like in the early days when we first sort of left the university servers because they just weren't doing what we needed to do. We started exploring what was out there, and we discovered Flickr, and we discovered SoundCloud, and we discovered YouTube, and all those things haven't fallen over in a hurry. So there's sometimes it's just great things that are next to free, which you can live in until a good product comes through that your institution sees the value in investing in. And that's the difficulty, making the argument that this stuff is worth something. You know, I mean, I guess from a personal point of view, memory is so important to us. It's so important to us as a community. It's important to us as individuals. Without it, we are nothing. But we think sometimes that we can get on without it. But it's really important that this stuff is looked after because of the wonderful connections it can make. This is the difficult bit of looking after. I mean, as I said, it would be easy if we just ignored the whole thing, but you just can't, because I could not live with myself if in another 20 years' time, some kid's wondering, well, what happened to all this stuff? And well, no one bothered to even try to look after it, you know? And we don't want to be in that sort of boat. We'd rather have a go and fail than not have a go at all and do nothing. Okay. But so whatever's been saved, whenever it has been saved, in whatever form we could do it, is better than if no one had done it, anything at all. I mean, the first attempts Phil had at this were just saving to hard drives, big boxes of hard drives.
Well, that was one of the options at the moment we're looking at, is getting a paper hard drive, sticking them in a cold room, because
well, all I did was copy it to the university servers, and then we broke the university servers. So once you do that, then they come and see you, and then you start talking about what you need, you know, and sometimes you just have to make your presence felt to show that there's something. Because when we're, you know, back in the 90s, I mean, the university archives, I think IT was instructed that the university archives would never need any IT support ever. And I kind of laugh at that statement now, because I mean, these are the most culturally rich and most exciting places for digital content to be created in. And the challenges that are in places like this are just wonderful, not just in the digitization of the stuff, but also the way that we're mapping and trying to bring it together in a much more interesting sort of theatrical canvas, if you want to call it that. It's not just the digital objects now, it's how you embed that context. But your problems with what you're doing is very similar. I mean, I look, they've invested in 3 archivists. I'm sure they will invest in some wonderful space for your stuff. You know?
And Liz, when I'll give a demo shortly to do with the Linears project, and a few of us do get together via Zoom occasionally, have like community of practice of just being able to support one another. So it's the University of Wollongong, Powerhouse Museum. So yeah, I think if we just keep in contact,
that'd be great. Yeah, I've been jotting down names as people have been speaking, going, oh, I'm going to email this person and this person. Thank you.
And Kerry's got her hand up too.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Philip Lloyd has to go shortly. So yeah, I'm just thinking if there's a question that relates to like technical side of things. Kerry, do you have a question?
No, I didn't. Hello, everybody. No, I didn't have a question. I was just going to back up. So if somebody's got a question for Phil, then I can talk once those are done.
Yeah. So any questions before Phil heads off that might relate to the actual digitization, capture, software, anything like that?
Software?
Technical questions?
Software?
Software?
Yep.
If all these DVDs that we've got of Prime News back over the last 15 years or so, I intended to load them into an edit program and then save them out as a file, an MPEG-4. Is there an easier way with other software than put it into an edit program and then make a file from it?
Not really, but if you're talking about that, you've got to remember that the original files were MPEG-2. You'll gain nothing by saving them in a better format. People tend to get a bit confused with the format. Once it's in a format of MPEG-2, you're better off continuing that as your format for storage, so that it's not changed to another format, because every time you change a format, you lose quality. So that, and particularly with MPEG-2, it's the lowest, almost the lowest possible vision quality that was used for storage. But the best thing with MPEG-2, I would suggest is convert your videos, your DVDs through a conversion program to MPEG-2 files, or just copy the files straight from the DVD. Keep them in that format, then use a conversion program to make them into, let's say, MP4 formats. They don't need to be high quality. They just need to be low enough to be able to see, use, and know what was on that particular DVD. But changing the format upwards is not really a guarantee of preserving it any better than just saving it. The key is to get it off those discs, because those discs will not be
readable.
Well, they won't necessarily survive into the future. Some of them will survive a lot longer than others, but certainly the key is to just get that MPEG-2 material off onto some kind of storage material that will maintain that original capture quality through.
So Phil, when someone extracts something from a DVD, they'll usually end up with VOB files. Is that an MPEG-2 or the VOB files that are on the discs themselves?
Provided they haven't transposed them into something else, yes, it's still MPEG-2.
Yeah.
The key is whatever wrapper it ends up in, as long as it stays an MPEG-2 file. Because a lot of these formats aren't the files themselves. For instance, you can have an MPEG-2 file in a number of different containers or wrappers, and they'll all have different sort of connotations on the end. But at the end of the day, what's in them is still MPEG-2. Yeah. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if it's not clear enough.
Yeah, the reason we store them in MPEG-4 is if you need to extract them from the NAS for someone to use, they can generally play an MPEG-4 on their computer or their TV.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying don't make MPEG-4s. I'm saying you don't make a higher quality thing from the MPEG-2. You certainly make an MPEG-4 that allows you to make that available for people to look at and use. But what I was talking about was the storage of your original material. Just get the MPEG-2 files off your DVDs and onto a better form of storage. Whatever else you do with them is fine. You could make 15 different formats if you like.
Yeah, look, there's a nice handy, if you extract your VOB files into folders, there's a nice little handy program that's free called Make MKV, which always releases a free license key every month. And you can use that little tool to transform it into an MKV file and then use another program. This is how I've done it. Phil's got a different method, but you can then use Handbrake to convert it into a MP4 or whatever you like. But generally it's MP4 or M4V. But that's a way of transforming what's on the disk into a digital format as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Seth uses a Black Magic for our film. I'm not sure what format that's stored in, Seth.
It's MP4.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think Phil might be planning a trip to Tamworth at some point to meet with you guys. Certainly got a lot in common.
Actually, I'd like to get up and catch up with what you people are doing. Absolutely.
Well, I can send you a DVD because at the moment our premises have got a problem with the asbestos, and we're dispersing our collection, our film, our tape, our museum part in 3 different locations over the next 3 years until the asbestos can be removed. So we're very fragmented now.
Yeah.
So I'll put you in contact with Phil if you like, Seth, and yeah, you can sort of make contact.
Yeah, that would be good.
Anyway, it's great. It's great that you're doing it, you know, because future generations of Tamworthians will really appreciate it, I can guarantee you.
Yeah. So look, I think Phil has to leave us now, so we might say goodbye to Phil and thank you for your contribution.
Sorry, I couldn't say
that. So I might just share the rest of the presentation where we're up to, just to talk briefly about the Linears project. So like I said, we've been digitizing for a while, and the work that had been done meant that we did have like quite an archive of material that was already digitized, but that question that's always looming is how do we search the content? So of course it's much different to embedding metadata into a photograph or any 2D material, and like I said, there can be multiple stories and content packed into one file. So we worked with a team here at the university from IT and Linear Software Company. So it was a team that was looking at unlocking a lot of audiovisual content, particularly that had been created during COVID. And when we sort of mentioned and started talking to IT about the archival footage, it was sort of sparked the interest, I think, because it was a different type of content that they'd been used to working with. So last year we did a pilot of only 30 files to see, you know, how the product worked. This year we've continued to work with the team, and the next pilot they've used over just 2,000 of the news files from the 1980s and 90s. And yeah, the project has actually been quite well, I think successful. It's still in a pilot phase, but yeah, we've been getting some really good reports from people that have used the project. So the pilot has involved university staff. They've given feedback, so there's been further development in the product. This is what Linus looks like, but I will actually log in so that you can see how it works. Okay, so this is the online tool. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is what the Linus tool looks like. Like I said, it's got the 2,000 videos embedded, and we can do search terms. For instance, someone might be researching the suburb of Lambton. You just pop the search term in. And then what the program does, it stitches together content from various files into one screen. So you probably can't, I'm not going to hear anything here, but you can see these short clips here have just stitched anything relevant together. At the side, it shows some text and metadata, so you can get a little bit more of an idea of the context of the story that's behind it. And then the other feature is that you can, if you come to a piece of footage that you want to share, you've got the ability of being able to either play the full clip, we can add it to a playlist, create a new playlist, and then build up like footage and as a resource relating to that single search term. Over on the side here is got like the different playlists. So as you can see, I've got playlists that relate to all different themes and topics. You can then share a playlist that you've created. So there's one here, Aboriginal history. I could then go and share that with a researcher. The next phase is to share it with the community and students. So I just think that's a really good function and feature to be able to share it. You can edit, delete the playlist, but yeah, just creating those multiple playlists is much quicker than what we were doing earlier, which was relating, just working off those cue sheets and the Excel spreadsheets. So the technology behind the Linus is really interesting in that it breaks up those individual files to like many thousands of files and runs a transcription. It also transcribes anything that's written in the background. So if there's a piece of footage, it's got signage, or it's a book launch, there's the ability then to sort of capture anything that's sort of there in the background. So it sort of works on multiple levels. It can also use facial recognition technology, which is, yeah, still a very controversial area to be working in. There's not a lot of legislation around facial recognition, but it's an area that, you know, this program has been developed and could potentially use that. Ideally, we we would be wanting to use it with someone's permission. That, you know, it's still, I think, yeah, just that cutting edge technology that that this this tool, yeah, we could actually use if, yeah, that was an area we wanted to go down. Yeah, so that's the tool and how it works. Now I've got a colleague, Belinda Adams from IT. If anyone's got any like questions around the technology, how it's been developed, or yeah, I'm sure Belinda would be available to answer any questions.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so like I said, it's very different technology. It's different to any other cultural sort of search online tool, searching content. Nancy Spasko is also one of my colleagues, and she's been involved in the project as well, from that legal issues around facial recognition technology. But again, yeah, it's just a new sort of project, and it's a pilot, but we can certainly see how it could be applied to other archives and collections that, yeah, relate to audiovisual and historic material. Because, yeah, that the biggest issue has been, you know, you can digitize all this material, but how are we really going to find content and be able to share content, find content fast, I think has been the issue.
Feedback so far has been quite positive across the pilot users, really finding that they have been able to unlock some content that they haven't found previously, which has been a good win.
It is. Yeah, it's a pretty powerful piece of software. But Liz, in answer to your question about proprietary, this is the question you're always dealing with, is that you've got these tools that come up and you're hoping that, well, we hope that Wizard will continue into the future, but at the moment I think it's within the University of Newcastle only at the moment, isn't it, for use for its staff and students? Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So that's the issue with us, is because we deal with researchers from all over the place looking for stuff. It still gives us the ability to find material if we need, you know, if they let us know what they're after, we can then isolate what bits they need and then point them to the YouTube version if we need to. These new tools are coming up all the time, so it's always good to experiment with what they can do and just see where it all takes us. But it's fantastic. I mean, the street sign recognition and the facial recognition has just been amazing with the sort of quality of the footage that we've had. So it's quite exciting in terms of what's around the corner with some of this stuff.
So the open access of this content is YouTube. This is just the search tool. So it's then how do we link the open access resource to where people are finding it, like on this online platform. And look,
these days a lot is you learn on the run. You know, it's really, this technology just moves so quickly that you're better off just experimenting and seeing where it takes you. You know, that's what we've been doing for the last 25 years, and it hasn't run us anywhere but into more exciting places. So doing something is better than doing nothing. So have a go, you know, because this is a problem that's going to confront everybody. Anybody that's got a magnetic tape at home, or your videotapes, your CD-ROMs, your DVDs, whatever you've got sitting at home is going to have some kind of problem. CD-ROMs, you know, 500 years, they said we were going to last until that French team discovered that little corrosive bit to them, and then that whole dream of the CD-ROM just came crashing down around everyone's ears. So the digital world is now the CD-ROM of the 1980s, and everyone thinks, oh, that's going to be wonderful too. But look, just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Never undervalue the physical world we live in, because that's what we've got to be looking after. And this whole cloud that everyone talks about is really just a data center somewhere that they've had to clear fell a whole lot of trees to build. So once those things go, everything goes with them, as happened earlier this year. I think it was with the French one. So we've always got to keep that reality check with what we do, make sure that what we're digitizing is, we need to do it, ask those questions all the time, and involve your wider communities, because that this is their collective memories that we're talking about, and we're playing our role as best as we can into some of this stuff. But yes, the proprietary thing is a question, because companies want to make money out of their intellectual property. But the problem is that when you get stuck like you have, Liz, what are you going to do with it if you're stuck in something where the company's no longer there and you've got no life raft out of that?
Yeah. So I guess my indication is always to go for the most low tech solution because of that reason.
Keep it simple, and if you can, use something
just
like YouTube if you can, to extract it. And use the toys that you can inside, use as much as you can. But the best digital preservation strategy for me, is sharing. Make sure it's able to be shared. Anything that's been locked behind a paywall or a wall of some description or a lock, forget it. It's just not going to survive.
And that was
someone's going to lose the key. And they're going to say, where was the key? No one knows where the key is.
My argument was, if you need 2 different types of software to get into this, then it's not accessible.
No.
It's just not. But we can't necessarily so one of our other challenges is that the institutional repository we've got is very open, which is great for some stuff, but not so great for a lot of other stuff. So by putting it into that preservation system, we're publishing, which isn't necessarily what we want or can do. So I don't know, I just find all this stuff fascinating.
It is fascinating. I mean, look, it's usually with us, with the 19th century stuff, we don't have to worry about it. But because we're dealing with relatively modern history, then the community has to make up its mind. All this went to air anyway at one point, it went to air as a news broadcast. So historically, sensitivities diminish over time.
And well, you've been working with the from what I understand, you've been working with the creators of the material as well.
Well, it has to be a partnership with NBN, the City of Newcastle Library, other institutions. We tried. I mean, the National Film and Sound Archive, depending on how they're going, either is in a state to help or not. But it's but we've just taken it on board to do what we can from where we are, and just do what you can. But I've got to hand it to Phil and the team. I mean, without them working out of that room with Anne looking after them, it's none of this would have been possible. So you need that sort of expertise, and then you can just pull together as much as you can. I mean, it's wonderful. I'd really love to have apprentices with these guys learning, because it's an art and science thing. Okay. Those reels, especially a film, are linked together with bits of tape, with information everywhere, and you've got to know the feel of what will survive the digitization process, and this is what these guys can impart. It's like an art, and it's an art based upon how we've chosen as a humanity to record our experiences in this time. Now we're doing that in a different way now through all this realm of social media, and that will pose its own problems for future generations, because they're shoving their history into Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all these other stuff. When these guys want their history back, watch out, because you've given it to someone else to look after. So it's really sort of just getting a handle on everyone's life has some kind of meaning, has some kind of importance, and these material records of it are really important in the long run, to just document what we've been able to achieve as a community, I guess. So our brief is really looking after our Hunter region and our Central Coast regions. That's our initial brief, but we're happy to help and provide others with our experiences in terms of what we've been through. Because I love the fact that Tamworth's doing what it's doing, and you guys down there, any regional area that can look after its audio visual history is it's something to be applauded if you can do it at whatever level you can do it at. So You can always say to them at La Trobe, "Oh, Newcastle's done that," and I go, "Well, if Newcastle can do it, then we should be able to do it." No, that's usually the argument.
Oh, don't worry, we've been negotiating new archival systems, and Recollect is definitely coming out on top. And I'm loving the post-custodial approach you've taken. I'm loving the
well, look, it's best
comments.
to go
That's
into the realms
fantastic.
of the impossible. Just go into the realms of the impossible, and because that's where all the fun lies. And you never know the wonderful associations and people that you meet along the way. I mean, the stuff that again has been made searchable has been used in the ABC's Revelation series. I mean, that's documenting what happened with the child abuse. We've also had the Stories of Our Town, which used a lot of our archival footage. That would not have been possible if this we didn't have material available for them to use. There's been a myriad of researchers that have been able to now use it once it's been there, even though it's in various stages of completion. We've got heaps of graduation videos that Michael, our longest serving volunteer, has digitized. It's yet to go up. There's so much that's yet to go up into the public domain, but at least it's been digitized, you know.
I was going to say, we've actually measured the time that researchers have taken before the they had access to the linear search. And I know one researcher spent like 2 weeks looking at women in sport and hours. She found quite a bit, but the time that it took. And so we've invited researchers back to do similar with the content, and it's just a matter of seconds, the content that's created. Just being able to be searched and found will just save so much time. So it's it's sort of like thinking of you've got to digitize things, but how are you going to use it once it's digitized, and where are you going to put it? And Mari, I think your question about organisations beginning to look at a project like this, I think what Gioni's just spoken about with the community and having that strong community around you is probably one of the best things you can do, and just openly reach out to different institutions. And, if it wasn't for people like Barry Nancaro and someone knowing somebody else in the community, but just certainly, being able to get together and talk to them and just share ideas and troubleshoot is really valuable. Amir, you've got your hand up. Would you like to?
Yes, I just would like to add a few notes on the matter of preserving the material. So I just make it quick. Like everything that we do digital is great and is very helpful, but we need to be mindful that every digital technology that we are using is a tool. So it means that you always, if anyone is negotiating, or if anyone is now building an archive or collection, they need also to negotiate for better storage for the originals. So this is like, the principle is that if you have your original and your original items condition is acceptable, so if they are not deteriorated, they would be your backup all the time. And you ask that where do we put our metadata? The best place to save your metadata is, in fact, in your in adjacent to your physical material, because digital might disappear through someone hacking the system, or next war, like in the next war, a government or a state just damages the whole entire digital network that the other country has. But what can be kept safer is the original material. So digital is good when you have something pressing, or there are like things that you need to make accessible fast. But if you have the option to keep the originals safer and in good condition, that would be the area that you actually need to negotiate. I mean, from the conservator's point of view.
Thanks, Amir.
No problem.
A lot of the old reel-to-reel was also rehoused in cardboard boxes that Amir had ordered. And Phil was able to help get that into those new situations, because before we used to just keep them in the metal containers or put them into cardboard boxes ourselves. But to have that expertise and, as to what to do to store them for as long as we could and safely as we could is always a bonus. And going back over the questions, Bryce, you've asked the question about what is the long-term plan for the source media. Has that answered that question for you? Or are you also interested in the digital? If Bryce is still there, that is.
Yeah, the long-term plan, I don't know the digital file or we don't hold the originals of the NBN content. Of the magnetic tape, so we digitized it and it went back to Channel 9.
Yeah, the film and audio-visual content of the university, yes, is held here in perpetuity. And what changes is how we store it. So the way that if we get a better place to put it in, let's say we get refrigerated storage at some point, then we have the intent to move it into that. Everything's been like an evolution. Before Amir arrived in 2008, our glass negs would just sit in cardboard boxes until we had a conservator who could properly clean and rehouse them into proper storage containers for glass negatives. And it's the same thing has now happened with the film. The original reel-to-reels have been taken off their metal spools and now put into special boxes, and they're all put in the same area now rather than sitting mixed with everything else. So if in the long term we have special storage areas for that type of format, we can maximize the conditions for that particular type of format. It's just with archives and cultural institutions, they don't always have the luxury of specialized storage for each of their different types of things. So,
and is there climate control? Is that a climate controlled space?
Yes, it is. Well, for certain amounts of time. The problem again is that you fight the environmental controls of turning off electricity, whereas again we've always tried to say that the damage is done with the fluctuations that happens when you turn off and turn on temperature. What we need is a temperature controlled vault for everything that we have culturally, but making the argument when people it's very fashionable to turn off and save power, but when you're dealing with the preservation of cultural material, you don't want those fluctuations. Similarly with relative humidity and temperature, everyone now is dealing with it because we've got mold and growth creating everywhere due to the fact that we've got a very wet season out there. So we've all got to keep an eye on even just our homes, because our homes are all at the moment racking up relative humidities of 70% or more. That's the danger zone. Okay, so we've always got to keep tabs on that, and that's why we data log every area we possibly can, so that we understand what's happening in the environment, in our storage environments, whether they're air conditioned or not. So some of them are pretty stable because we've got we monitor them. We've been monitoring them for as long as we've been able to. So, but it's always a struggle to upgrade specialized. I mean, Amir can talk to you about this as well, because it's a constant struggle with resources and how you plan areas. But suffice to say that every type of storage, whether it's paper, whatever it's storing, whether you're wood, whether you're storing audio-visual material, whether you're storing glass or whatever it might be, needs its own specialized environment to do it properly. The way we have to do it is that we have to combine these environments with living people. We have to have people in the same environments as our storage environments rather than having them in a vault. But one day down the track, you never know, in 10, 20, 30 years, whenever, if God forbid we're still all here, there might be a better solution to a lot of these things. It all depends on how the community values its heritage, its history. Okay, so you see the importance that records have for Aboriginal people, putting together their culture and their life. Same thing happens with migrant communities right across the board. But it's the place itself, the country itself, has to understand the value of its culture, not just in Canberra and Sydney and Melbourne, but also in its regional areas that have had a part to play in the way that the country's been shaped. So it's all connected, but we do the best with what we can and what we've got.
What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh, God. That's a good question. Who asked that question?
Ari.
Nairi. God, I don't know. What should we? I don't know. I'm just a babe in the woods with all this. I'm just learning as I go every day. We all are in a way. It's just been, look, it's no, I don't know. It's just basically we've just tried to help the community that we're in with what we have here in the university. That's basically it. We see no difference because, look, frankly, the library that we're in now was funded by, people, miners, putting in a shilling of their pay packets into a fund from the 1940s to help fund it. So the University of Newcastle is very much embedded in its community. It's here because of its community. So whatever ails the community is what we're involved in, because we see it as part of us, and hopefully they see the university as part of them. So what have we known? Well, I don't know. We learn every day what we do. That's a difficult question. I don't know what to say. I just keep talking rubbish.
I think because, we have got such a strong community. People do tell us, or they're willing to help. They're willing to share their knowledge. And I think that's certainly an advantage, having that community around you.
I mean, a lot of this thing, even with the Living Histories platform, it's fantastic to try and involve the community in actually putting the data in directly. And there's been a number of projects that Paige Wright, our manager, has been involved with over the years to involve community groups. John Whitty has a fantastic example with the Rainbow Histories group, the way that they've brought together a lot of material. But Amir's absolutely right. That original, if you can safeguard that material with the original and protect the original, that's really important, because you don't know what's going to happen with the digital. I'm not guaranteed that it's going to survive. But it's always good to not put all your eggs in one basket and just make sure you're looking after what you can, as best as you can. But it all starts with the original. If you've got the original looked after properly, then it can be digitized in whichever evolution of digital process comes your way in future. I mean, the sort of stuff we digitized back in the 1990s, we have to redo now because the level of technology has just increased so much, and the capabilities of our machines just weren't up to scratch to deal with it, So the way that technology moves, who knows what might be around the corner. And so it's always good to hold on and protect your original as long as you can. And that includes even these at-risk formats like AV. So
thank you.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
Shut up, Johnny. Well,
I think we're almost at the end of our time, man. We spent the whole event.
I've popped some History Week updates in the chat, just to let people know different events that are on this week.
Yeah, and just remember on the weekend, Paul F. Can you say that at all? No. Paul F. Walsh. It's the 25th anniversary of the Novocastrian Tales book. Novocastrian Tales came out in 1997. They raised $600,000 to create a space at the John Hunter Hospital called Yallowa Place, which was an Aboriginal accommodation centre for people undergoing treatment there. It was quite an amazing. It's probably the first Indigenous, non-Indigenous collaboration. It's been called Called the Allawah Place or resting place in a Wabbigal, it is believed to be the first combined Indigenous, non-Indigenous memorial in Australian history. So he's written a beautiful Novocastrian tale to add to it called Communion, which we'll share the link to. And we've got original editions of the book, but that's been launched this week. There's wonderful history illuminated events happening through Lake Macquarie Libraries. Is that right, Anne?
Yeah, yep. So I've just shared those in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we've got the Threlkeld and Biruband and Threlkeld film screening with Q&A at Charlestown Library happening on Thursday morning. Okay. Anything else?
I'll just see if any of the newcomers here today want to be part of the online forums. We have them monthly. And yeah, we vary the themes and topics and invite some guest speakers. So yeah, just reach out if you want to be added to the group email list or get updates on upcoming meetings. Yeah, more than welcome to join us.
Kerry, is there anything you want to say? You've had your hand up the whole time, and I don't know which bit.
Oh, it's all right.
The stage is yours if you want.
Oh no, it's I just wanted to say that thanks for taking on such a vast job, because it is a huge job, and I think those of us who are in it understand just how big it is. And that it starts off with, you think you know what you're doing, and then all of a sudden 6 months later you're like, you know what, we can do that better. So it's a constantly evolving situation as well.
Yeah.
And when it comes to what you wish you knew, I wish I knew how many times I was going to have the conversation with IT about how much storage I was going to need and why it needed to be a particular type of storage.
Yeah.
And yes, we did need to have access to it because we needed to check it.
Yeah.
They just and I think those server fires in France did me a huge favor, because I was able to go, ta-da, see, I told you that wasn't a great idea. But yeah, it's a massive job, and you guys have done a great job in it, and I truly appreciate being able to access all of that stuff.
Well, Perry, I was going to say, have a look at the people that have been involved, and Barry Nancaro, who's with us, like I said. You know, if it wasn't for these guys, it's just a whole community that have just put their heart and soul into it, because they know how important it is.
And have a read of
volunteers are massive.
And have a read of the YouTube comments too, because some of them, I mean, just relate to families that have connected with members that they've lost, and they find an artwork or something. There was one in there that they found some artwork from one of their, I think his brother-in-law that passed away, and he found embedded in one of the news broadcasts. And once they start there, they never end, because the news broadcasts are connected. But the other thing for us is that the same broadcast had Gary Jones in it, who's a former, he organised the exhibition. He's one of the lecturers here. So everything is sort of interconnected with these stories. But the real joy for us is when people find something that connects with their families and tells a bigger story. There's some wonderful things with regards to the Owen gun and its manufacture, when we put up some footage that we digitized there. So yeah, it's oh, and just one more stop press. On the 9th of September, it is the 225th anniversary of John Shortland establishing a settlement. Did he establish a settlement, or did he just sail on through? But anyway, that will be, that's the 9th of September. I think that's when he did his ice sketch for his father, was it, Robert? Not sure, he says. Okay. Anyway, well, bear that in mind. If you want to see the original in high resolution, it's on the Hunter Living Histories site. So, it also contains the first, I think, the original ice sketch contains the first mentions of Aboriginal people in this area, recorded by a European. So, oh, hang on, I might be wrong. 1795 would be earlier than that. Yes, at Port Stephens. Anyway, we live and we learn. Anything else before we go? Here's your last chance. Anyway, thank you to Anne for pulling all this together. I hope you've enjoyed this nitty-gritty deep dive into the audio-visual world that we've been working in as part of our work for the last few years now, and continue to enjoy. And if there's anything we can do to help or advise, just have a look at some of the posts on the Hunter Living Histories site that document the process as it evolved. And I hope that will give you a bit of background on how we approached it and how we targeted everything, if you want all that nitty-gritty sort of work. All right. I think if you just click on, is there a particular category heading, and like MBN archive or something?
Yeah, I think it's just
posts?
audio visual archive,
Yeah.
just in the category down the side. But yeah,
and that will locate all the posts relating to the formation of the GlamX lab and Phil's arrival and how he established that part of the GlamX lab for the audiovisual digitization. And if there's any questions, just send them through to us if you've got further things, and we can let you know as much as we know.
Excellent. Thanks, Gianni, for chairing. And
okay,
wrap up. We're 6 minutes over time. So.
I'm sorry, that's all my fault. Our next meeting is the 10th of October, and you're all welcome to attend. And just if you want to be on the mailing list, just please send an email through, and we'll make sure that you're notified. Apart from that, thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us. I hope it's been of some worth to you, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.